Hello everyone and welcome back to our Budget Builds monthly series, and to the month of July. Let's see what kind of system we're building at in this month's episode. So before we get too far into the video, just want to outline what Budget Builds monthly is. In case you've seen this before or you're new to the channel, welcome. Let's check out what Budget Builds monthly is all about. Posting the first Monday of every month, I review your budget request submitted via the Google form down in the description below. Using this information and PCPartPicker, I tried to build the best bang for the buck PC within your budget, considering any constraints or platform preferences you may have. We usually make 4 builds, 2 AMD and 2 Intel, using either DDR4 or DDR5. We also check for deals on Microcenter and Newegg to see if we can modify the build to create a better PC within your budget. If possible, we also take a look at the used marketplace too. Next, we compare each build using online benchmarks and list out the pros and cons of the top options. This helps us figure out which build is best for you. And don't forget, we can't do any of this without your input. Speaking of the input, let's see how we fill out the Budget Builds request form. Now, a quick disclaimer to go with this: Budget Builds will be as close or slightly over the budget due to parts and availability, as well as sales going on at the recorded time. In case you forgot or you're new to the channel, this is how we fill out the Budget Builds request form. For your privacy, we do not collect your Google information. Just don't worry about that. You actually don't have to sign in. Budget Builds do not include taxes, fees, or Windows keys unless specifically asked otherwise. Budgets will be in USD. Now, form factor preference, this will determine case size, as in this is the motherboard size we're going to pick. If you want a mini ITX motherboard, we will go with a mini ITX case. Unless you want us to get a micro ATX motherboard and then a specific case size, just put here in other. For CPU and GPU preferences, if you want us to build an Intel only system or an AMD only system, and same thing for their graphics cards. If you have any other preferences or requests when it comes to CPU or GPU, like an Intel GPU, just put it here in the other category. Areas of focus just covers the hierarchical standpoint of how we're going to build out the system and spread that budget. If you want us to focus first on your CPU, then your motherboard, maybe your graphics card, we're just going to put the budget more focused towards those. Focus first, and then focus last. We'll just grab some generic and placeholder items for you, the user, to actually pick out later on. For already purchased our own system components, if you already have a power supply or a case or anything like storage, just put it here. Just specify specifically what you have, just so we can work that into the build and we don't have to worry about putting money towards something in that budget that you already have. No sense in buying 2 PC cases if you can just use the one you already have. For peripherals, if you are requesting any, like a mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, a headset, just press on the peripheral and then the other just request what kind. For example, if you want a 1440p monitor, just hit monitor and then press 1440p in here. And then other request, no RGB or anything else you want us to know, just press in the other and then hit submit. And that pretty much concludes filling out the Google form. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comment section below. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's check out what kind of system we're building out in this month's episode. This user has a budget request of 3,000 USD. Wants a combination working gaming system, no form factor preference. It's an AMD CPU with no graphics card preference. Wants us to focus first on that CPU, then the motherboard, the graphics card, and so forth. First time buyer, so no already purchased or owned system components, no peripheral request, and for other requests, wants this thing for streaming and video editing. Alright, so $3,000 is a good chunk to work with a budget, especially for that AMD CPU. I'm going to focus more on AM5 as we can get some pretty high-end AM5 CPUs, especially with that $3,000 budget. So we're going to focus actually first on that CPU, and then we'll focus on graphics card, and then we'll get some RAM, and then our motherboard, power supply case, and everything else after. So it's actually not that bad. And it's all thanks to that $3,000 budget. I know I keep repeating myself, but we're probably going to build out 2 systems, one with an AMD GPU, one with an Nvidia graphics card, and then we'll take a look at some bundled deals, rework our systems, and go from there. We're going to start things out with our Nvidia build. Here we have the Ryzen 9 9950X 3D. It's a 16 core, 32 thread, 4.3 GHz boosted to 5.7. For CPU cooler, we have the Arctic Liquid Freeze 3 Pro, 360mm AIO. For motherboard, we have the Gigabyte B850 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ATX motherboard. For memory, we have the G-Skill Trident Z5 RGB 64GB kit of DDR5 6400 CL32. Now, if you can get this without RGB, I would go for that one, but it's all up to the user preference with that. For storage, we have the Samsung 990 Pro 4TB PCIe 4.0x4 NVMe SSD. I would actually want to switch this out to 2 separate drives, one for your programs and stuff, and then one for games and project files and everything, since the user will be using this as a combination working gaming system. And a PCIe Gen 5 drive will be less storage for less price, but it's all up to the user what they want to do in place of that. For our graphics card, we have the RG Strix Gaming RTX 4080 Super. It's a 16GB video card. Now this one is currently out of stock. In-stock cards will go for a couple $100 more, and you could probably find one on eBay. We're not going to actually take a look at that in this video, but you could probably find one on eBay or wait till the stock goes back in stock and then you can get it for that price. It is a little bit difficult for MSRP right now for certain graphics cards. And then our case is the Fractal Design North XL ATX full tower case. This is more of a placeholder for whatever case the user wants to use instead. I just padded the budget a little bit for that. And then our power supply is the Corsair RM1000E 1000W 80 plus gold fully modular power supply, sitting right around $47 under our budget. Now, because the user did not specify a preference in GPU, we were able to take this build and do an AMD card. So why don't we take a look at that? So the build pretty much stays the same for the AMD card, except we added another kit of G-Skill Trident Z5. It's another 64GB kit. You can change this for more storage, pretty much anything else. Maybe you want less memory, but spend more on that case, or just have more money left beforehand for overall. Now, there's a bunch of trade-offs with this, but it's just showing that we have the money in the budget to add more memory. In place of this now, RX 7900 XTX 24GB video card, currently in stock in Newegg. But yep, other than that, everything else pretty much stays the same. Now, we're also going to take a look at some bundle deals on Microcenter. We're going to see if it's possible since we are running a 9950X 3D. But why don't we take a look at that first? Alright, since we are only doing AMD, I'm going to click on this. And we have $1,034.98 for the Nvidia GPU. And then we have $1,264.97 for the AMD GPU. Now, the reason I'm saying it that way are they're 2 separate builds. The $1,200 we have for the AMD GPU does include the extra set of RAM that we got, while the $1,034 is just for the plain build. So we're going to take a look at this real quick and see if we can find like a 9950X 3D or whatnot to see if we can actually get a bundle build here. Alright, so it seems like the only CPU on here that we could get would be the Ryzen 9 9950X. And then we could actually spend $50 more and get this Gigabyte X870E motherboard. It would be a 32GB kit of DDR5 RAM in place of the 64GB kit that we have. But because we're only spending $750, you could get another 32GB kit of DDR5 RAM Now I'm unsure if this is a dual stick kit or it's a single stick. So why don't we just take a look at this by hitting build with it and see what we get. So this is giving us a 32 gig kit of Flare X5 from G.Skill. It is DDR5 6000. Our custom build was doing DDR5 6400 and it was 64 gigs. So we're just going to see if we can change out our RAM. We're going to change. Select this 64 gig kit of DDR5 6000. So it seems we're stuck with this G.Skill Flare X5 32 gig kit. We can actually upgrade this to a 64 gig kit of the Corsair Vengeance RGB RAM. I believe it's only a $130 upgrade. Right, which is kind of weird that you could only do it with their specific RAM. You can't just upgrade the G.Skill Flare X5 to just a 64 gig kit. I don't understand why they don't offer that as an option. But we now have the Ryzen 9 9950X, the Gigabyte X870E, and a 64 gig kit of Corsair Vengeance DDR5 6000 CL30, all for $880. That's if you can get this at your local Microcenter. That also means that for either build, we now have about $200 to $450 of extra buffer to play with. The only thing with this bundle deal is it's a Ryzen 9 9950X and not a 9950X 3D. So it's up to the user which one they want to do in place. Of course, you can't change out the CPU for an upgrade. Everything like that would be at its MSR price. Now, if we quickly compare the Ryzen 9 9950X and the 9950X 3D, we can see that it's around a 6 to 7% difference in the CPU mark comparison. There are a lot more comparisons online to actually compare the two. Now, I would say if the user was using this strictly for a workstation, to get the Ryzen 9 9950X in place of the X3D, but because the user also wants to use this for gaming, you should get the X3D chip. Now, you could drop this down to a 9900X3D or even a 9800X3D, but then you're dealing with less cores and threads and more things of that nature. So I will leave this up to the user whether they want to do the Ryzen 9 9950X 3D or the Ryzen 9 9950X and the bundle deals on Microcenter. If you do the bundle deals on Microcenter, you will be left with quite a bit of room to actually move some more of that budget around. $250 to $450 depending on the graphics card you get leaves you with enough money to get more RAM, more storage, and actually some money left in that budget for anything else you want to do. Which brings us to our results. We have our Nvidia graphics card build with our Ryzen 9 9950X 3D and our RTX 4080 Super. We have our full AMD build with our Ryzen 9 9950X 3D and our RX 7900 XTX with the possibility of upgrading to more memory or more storage. And then we have our bundled deal Microcenter build with our Ryzen 9 9950X. And we have plenty of room to either choose which graphics card we want to get, either the Ryzen 9 7900 XTX or the 4080 Super, and then with the possibility of upgrading to more memory, storage, and actually having some extra room down the line. So it's all up to the user what they want to do. And that brings us to the end. Thank you all so much for watching. User, I hope we built out these PCs to your specifications. And that brings us to the end. Thank you all so much for watching. Consider subscribing for more content like this. Don't forget to fill out that Google form. Like if you like this, if you dislike it. And I'll see you all in the next video.